Have you ever noticed that some people never post photos of themselves on social media? No selfies, no updates, no carefully chosen angles. They scroll, they watch, they know what's trending, but they stay invisible. And in a world where visibility is currency, that absence feels intentional. Most people assume it means insecurity, shyness, or low confidence. But psychologically, not posting photos often has very little to do with fear of being seen. In many cases, it has everything to do with control. Let's start with the first layer: self-definition. People who don't post photos online often prefer to define themselves internally rather than externally. They are less comfortable letting algorithms, reactions, or strangers shape how they are perceived. When you post a photo, you hand over a piece of your identity to interpretation. Likes, comments, silence all become feedback. For some people, that feedback feels intrusive. So instead of asking, "How will people see me?" they ask, "Do I even want to be seen this way?" This is not avoidance, it's selectivity. The second layer is emotional privacy. Social media blurs the boundary between public and personal. A photo looks simple, but psychologically it carries context, mood, timing, meaning. Once shared, that context is lost. Anyone can project their assumptions onto it. People who avoid posting photos often value emotional containment. They don't want their inner state exposed to casual observation, not because they're hiding, but because they're protecting something they consider personal. This is especially common in people who process emotions deeply. They experience life fully, but quietly. Turning moments into content feels like flattening something meaningful. Now, let's talk about the third layer: performance fatigue. Posting photos online isn't neutral, it's performative. Even when it looks effortless, it requires decisions. Which version of me? Which angle? Which moment? Which caption? For people who already perform socially in real life, the idea of performing digitally feels exhausting. They don't want to manage impressions twice, so opting out becomes relief. Not posting isn't disengagement, it's conservation. Here's something most people miss. People who don't post photos often see more than those who do. They observe patterns. They notice how attention shifts, how validation changes behavior, how identity becomes curated. Watching this from the outside reinforces their choice to stay out of it. This brings us to the fourth layer: autonomy. When you don't post photos, you retain control over when and how people access you. Your image isn't searchable. Your mood isn't documented. Your absence becomes a boundary. In psychology, autonomy is closely tied to well-being. For some people, not posting photos is a way to maintain psychological independence in a system designed to extract attention. Now, let's address a common misconception. Not posting photos does not mean someone dislikes attention. It often means they prefer intentional attention, one-on-one conversations, direct connection, chosen audiences. They don't want to broadcast. They want to connect. There's also a strong link between not posting photos and identity stability. People with a solid sense of self feel less pressure to reaffirm it publicly. They don't need constant external confirmation that they exist, matter, or belong. Their identity feels anchored. Now, let's talk about vulnerability. Posting photos opens you up to silent judgment. Even without comments, the awareness of being seen changes how people feel. For some, that vulnerability feels unnecessary. They already feel exposed enough in daily life, so they choose invisibility online, not as avoidance, but as regulation. Here's a twist that surprises many people. Some of the most confident people online post very little of themselves. Their confidence isn't performative, it's quiet. They don't need visibility to feel valid. And because they don't rely on online affirmation, they're less affected by comparison culture. Other people's highlight reels don't threaten them because they're not measuring themselves on the same scale. Now, let's talk about trust. People who don't post photos often wait until they trust the space before sharing themselves. Social media feels too open, too permanent, too uncontrolled. Once something is posted, it doesn't belong to you anymore. For people who value consent and boundaries, that loss of control matters. So they choose silence, not because they have nothing to show, but because they're selective about where they show it. Now shift perspective. If you reach someone who never posts photos and you've wondered if something is wrong with you, here's the truth. This behavior is not a deficit. It's a preference shaped by how your brain balances privacy, control, and connection. The question isn't, why don't I post? The question is, what does visibility cost me? And that answer is different for everyone. Here's the final insight. In a world that equates visibility with value, choosing not to post photos is a quiet form of self-definition. It's saying, I exist without proof. I matter without performance. Not everyone needs to be seen to feel real. Some people feel most themselves when they are unseen. If you want more brief psychology breakdowns, human behavior, emotional patterns, and the hidden choices people make online, subscribe. New briefs every week.